And we're recording. Oh, how would you like me to introduce you? Just give me a pseudonym or
Hi.
something like that.
Um,
Ian.
I'll be Ian. Yeah.
Hi for Ian. Yeah, that would do. Right, so just introducing you to the people who are going to be listening to this show. This is a slightly different one because I normally talk about the financial side of things and money. But this time I'm going to be chatting to a guy called Ian here. And we're literally just going to talk about the law and everything he knows because his knowledge is far beyond anything I've ever heard before. So, Ian, welcome to the show. Let's start off about this free man thing and how people have got different opinions on that. What do you know?
Free man.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting stuff. I spent 20 years going down a free man rabbit hole.
Hmm,
And I am not saying it's not true, but I understand that it's not going to do anyone any good. So I've left it behind now.
that's right. What made you start
Um,
down the free man rabbit hole?
it was research into, I can't remember his name now. What was his name? Robert Maxwell, is it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Jordan Maxwell. Sorry, Jordan Maxwell. Many, many moons ago. And
Okay.
yeah, understanding about the Admiralty law, etc., and the legalese language, and it's all really interesting. And I'm not saying it's not true; it probably is true,
Hmm.
but you have to let it go at some point because it's not going to fix anything.
Yeah. Right.
What it's going to do is keep us going around in a circle with not actually advancing anywhere. So yeah, it's great knowledge and it's probably true, but at some point you have to move on.
Okay. Yeah.
So
What was that point that made you realise that?
when I started looking into the law, and I realised that the law is there to help you. It was there for made for us, really,
Hmm.
but it's just been subverted by powers that be. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's what we've got
Hmm.
at the moment. It's a tyrannical system. Um,
Yeah.
there's not a lot we can do about it. Running around in the free man circles, and all that'll do is get you sectioned and put into a nutcase house. So we have
Ah.
to sort of fight them with their own bullets, really.
Got ya. Got ya. Okay. So you sort of looked at this at the practical side of things, and you were just like, right, there's a real problem here. We can't beat him, so may as well join them, sort of thing. Use their own laws against them.
Um, Yeah, you've got to sort of fight fire with fire to the extent of they're not going to listen to you when you talk about the free man, sovereign movements, etc.
Hmm.
They've already got their own agenda set up about it and how to deal with it. So it's only going to get you into trouble.
Hmm.
So as I said, I don't believe it's not true, but there's just better ways of fighting.
All
So
right.
for me, it's using their laws that they've left loopholes in that we can find and use against them.
Right. Great. So what was the first kind of topic that you looked at after you realised that the free man wasn't going to get you anywhere?
Well, I had to go back right to the very beginnings of Saxon law in the 1600s and so on. How was law created? And so my interest lied in where do these people actually get the belief that they can rule over us and tell us what to do?
Hmm.
So it started with, like I said, in the Saxon times of Alfred the Great, which was around about 840 to 890. He wrote the Book of Dome, which was basically the 10 laws of God, the 10 commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai,
Hmm.
and the customs of the people. And that was what basically was law. And it stayed that way for centuries. So this is where we get this free man, we're free people from, because it's always been about we're just governed by the rules of God.
Hmm.
And even the Queen's Coronation Oath, it states this. If you've ever read the Coronation Oath Act, it states that she will govern us by the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel. That's it. There's no statutes, there's no acts, there's none of that. It's just the laws of God. So the Ten Commandments.
Hmm.
Everything else is brainwashing and led us to believe that certain people have privileges and rights that can tell us what to do. When in fact, there's no evidence for this anywhere that they do have that right.
Okay. So, but are you saying that if we if we throw these Ten Commandments back at them, they're just gonna think we're crazy and sectionists?
Well, when you walk into a court of law, the first thing they get you to do when you stand in a dock is swear on the Bible. So therefore, they're acknowledging that there's a higher source of power than they are.
Oh yeah.
So therefore, if they obey the laws of God, and we do, we can hold them accountable under the laws of God. So nowadays you can go in and you don't have to swear on the Bible. They give you another option. And this is also how they've sort of changed the police oath, and they now have an attestation or affirmation. So they've altered it around to change it to suit themselves again. And but basically, the highest form of the rule of law is the law of nature. And for instance, you cannot change the laws of nature, and therefore they cannot change the law of God, as essence. We're at what you call a Protestant nation. This goes way back in history. So, as a Protestant nation, we are governed by predominantly now, which is the Bill of Rights. So everything in the Bill of Rights states all of our freedoms, liberties, and where we have the control over the government and the Parliament.
Yeah. So these bills that you're talking about, these are the oh crikey, the constitutional statutes.
Yeah. People don't realise that we have a constitution. They think only America does. But the American Constitution came from our Constitution. And they stopped teaching this in the 70s in our schools because they don't want us to know this. But we have many documents. They're uncodified, and the many documents make up our Constitution. The Act of Settlement, the Coronation Oath Act, Bill of Rights, Charter of the Forest. We've got loads of them that make up all of our, Constitution. And they've done away with the Magna Carta, basically. They stripped that down. There's only 4 clauses left. But now everything we can rely on is written into the Bill of Rights.
Oh, fantastic.
So that is the most powerful document we have. So running through that, we can quite happily run through that now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so how is it that these people can tell us what to do? Where can 650 members of Parliament tell nearly 70 million people what to do? Only by brainwashing, literally. So in the very first lines of the Bill of Rights, it states that whereas the Lord's spiritual, which is the church, and temporal, which is the House of Lords, and the Commons assembled, okay, which is the Houses of Parliament, it states they lawfully and freely represent the estates of the people of this realm. So they are our representatives. That means there's an agent-principal relationship going on. They are our agents and we are the principal. And in the olden days, that was a master-servant, which is why they are also known as the public servants. So you cannot sack your master, your boss. We are the boss. So they have to do what we say. So as we go through this document, it highlights this and it literally states this. Upon the tendering of the crown, round about the middle section of it, it states that these are our ancient and indubitable rights. So we've forgotten this. We haven't been told this. Down on the acceptance of the crown, it says that nothing can be done to the prejudice of the people. So therefore, you cannot sack your boss. You can't tell him what to do. As our representatives, they have no right to tell us to do anything other than run the economy. And that's what their job was. Their job isn't to tell people how to live, how to bring up your children, or what to do. But through brainwashing and television programming and the media, people now have believed that they have to sort of believe and understand what these public authorities are saying to them is true. Well, it's not true. We're free. Slavery's been abolished. No one owns you. No one can tell you what to do. But if you acquiesce to it, then yes, you've made a contract with them. So this document, the Bill of Rights itself, is a contract. Because when you read through the document, it says that there was an offer made. So they were offered the crown and they considered the crown and then they accepted the crown. Well, these are the terms of a contract. So therefore, this is a contract between the people and the monarch, who the monarch in their first act created Parliament. That was the Act of William and Mary. Okay, and then the second act, they created all of the fictions. So the fictions of law, the fictions of public, every servant or every public office is all a fiction. This was created in the second act of William and Mary. So this is what our fictitious name is. Everything is a fiction. It's not real. Our name, for instance. You can't, in a court of law, it doesn't stand. It's what's known as hearsay.
Oh.
So all of this is basically what's been established since 1688 is the fact that you, me, and everything else is a fiction of law created by William and Mary in the first and second acts. And therefore, nothing can be done to us because it's an agreement. It's a contract with us. And it's that simple, really. If you roll down right to the very bottom, it states that this stands for all times, forever, and it cannot be changed. Parliament can't change it because Parliament didn't make it. See, at the time, what happened was there was this tyrant called James II, and he'd go around and do terrible things to people and have sex with your wife if he wanted to, and people didn't want him. So these barons, there was I think it was 7 or 8 barons, wrote a letter to William of Orange, who was in Holland at the time, Norway, and they said to him, 19 out of 20 people want a new king. Come over and be our new king. So that's exactly what he did. James done a runner, and now we have this man running the country who's from Holland, not even English, and he dismantled Parliament, threw them all out and got rid of them and brought his own people in. Well, the Parliament, they didn't like it, so they went to the City of London Corporation, which is, again, something that people aren't aware of. That the City of London Corporation has its own laws and rules. And basically, he went to the alderman, which is like the highest of the high in there, with their complaints. And he heard about this and he didn't want a coup going on. So William of Orange turned around and said, I'm going to send a writ to all the boroughs of the land. I want someone to come and represent you and tell me how you wish to be governed. And we write down these rules and these laws. And that's exactly what happened. You know, we had these, what the judges sometimes I've heard say is, oh, it's for the barons only. Well, it wasn't. It was for burgesses as well. And if you look up the word burgesses, it means freemen of that town. Some of them were barons, some of them weren't. So it stands for all time because it says so in the document. Once this agreement was made, I think it was written on the 13th of February. It was called the Declaration of Rights. And this was offered to William and Mary. And they said, if you accept this, you can be king and queen. So once they accepted it, it became law for everybody. And this is why in the document it says, you know, nothing can be done to the prejudice of the people. And words in law are very powerful and they mean what they say. You know, there's certain interpretations of statutes acts that it declares you have to interpret that word exactly as it says. Nothing means nothing. They can't fine you, they can't punish you, they can't do anything to you because they work for you.
Wow.
But we've been led to believe that we have to, you know, follow, here's a ticket, pay it. No thanks, it's a contract. You've agreed to do that through your ignorance because they want you to be ignorant. So I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it's our fault. It's not our fault. They've deliberately deceived us to not know. So a lot of these movements that say, oh, we need to know, we should forgive them and we need to do this. No. We need to get them out because they're deceitful tyrants. And they've taken away our laws and they've hid our laws and they've created all these statutes and acts that actually don't really apply to us at all. They only apply to the people who make them. We weren't there. We didn't create them. So what's it got to do with us? And if they work for us, they can only apply to them. You know?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
I mean, if you're my employee and you create a load of laws, how can they apply to me? They can't. But people don't wish to see this, I think. They feel it's safer just to go along with it, you know?
Yeah, I know loads of people that have just done that. They just don't want they don't want to deal with conflict, so they'll just acquiesce or just say, yeah, okay. You know, there's no pushback, but then they haven't been taught how to push back because they're ignorant of what to do and what to say. They don't know where they stand. All they see is
their power. Well, their power comes from literally they're all policemen. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of thief takers. Have you ever heard of the thief takers?
Thief takers?
Thief takers.
Oh, a thief or beef? Did he say or what?
A thief taker.
As in like THEFT?
Yes.
Oh, okay, right. No, I've not heard of him.
No, this was in the 1730s, I think it was. There was a man, I think his name was Charles Hitchin, and he was a leader of a gang. The gang used to go around and rob people. Then they'd bring back all the treasures to Charles. Charles would identify the victim and then go back and sell him with these goods. These were the very first policemen.
Right.
So literally, the policemen were a bunch of villains who would rob you and sell you back your belongings. And that's the history of the police way back in the 1730s, I think it was. after that, and they were literally, then they made the people of the street take it upon themselves, which was called the Bow Street Runners. So the Bow Street Runners were, you would have one person from the magistrates would create a, what you'd call a policeman or a constable. And that one person would have a whistle and he'd blow it, and the people would come out and they'd help him police. So we became police. We're all police, and we have the power of arrest. Everybody has the power of arrest. A policeman has no special powers other than what we all have, because he is nothing more than what we are. We are all equal before the law. So a policeman can't do anything that we can't do. He's just paid to do that job full time. But under these statutes and acts that they've created, they've started giving all these special powers and all these special rights. And it's not true. They don't actually exist. And this is in law. You can find this out. You see, in law, there's something called privileges. Let me see what it's called. It's called the Statute of Monopolies Act, 1623.
Oh,
And in the Statute of Monopolies Act, it says that there is no special privileges.
I'll tell you what. Hold that thought 1 second. I'll just I'm recording this on the screen, so I'm just going to go and search for that. Statutes and Monopolies Act. Did you say?
Yep, 1623.
1623. Right. Yeah. So section 6 just popped up there.
It's in, I think it's paragraph 1 and 2 actually, but I haven't looked at it for a while. Let me see if I can have a look on my phone.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay.
Have you got it up?
The King's Declaration against monopolies and grants of penalties and dispensations.
That's right.
Oh, brilliant.
All dispensations are illegal and void. So why would that be? Because we are all equal before the law. You can't have any special privileges.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just wondering, when you've got, obviously, coppers knocking on your door or whatever, how would you, is there a process you can go through, or do you just simply need to know this and tell them? But I mean, if you feel a bit vulnerable, because let's say you've got, they normally come around in pairs at least, don't they? Sort of 2 against 1.
Yeah.
So,
well, see, the thing is, they don't know. They're not taught this. They're taught statutes and acts. They're taught to believe that statutes are law. Well, statutes aren't law. There's many ways that you can prove a statute isn't law. There must be legitimate aim. There was a court case, and I can't remember his name. It was about he was a clergyman or someone, and it was in Scotland. It was in not too long ago, not in 2020, I think it was. Oh, let me see if I should have got this up. I didn't know I was going to cover this stuff.
Don't worry about it. Just freestyling. Just go with it.
But anyway, it stated what a law is and how to make the law, and there must be 3 principles of law.
I'll tell you what. I'll see if I can. Find this. So 3 principles of law.
Yeah.
I've got rules of law. Wikipedia. And Andrew Law, 3 guiding principles. Oh, it's philanthropy. Hold on. Rule of law. Is it so 3 principles?
Yeah.
All right. I'll see if maybe I can. Is there anything else I can add to maybe try and find it? What are the 3 principles of criminal law?
Reverend Dr. William Phillip. It was in the Court of Sessions 2001. So it'd be CSOH 32.
So 2001?
Yeah.
I think I just saw something here. Recent cases, Reverend Dr. William J.U. Phillip and others for judicial review of the closure
That's
of
the one.
places of worship in Scotland.
That's it, yeah.
Oh, right, great.
And in there, they defined how law is created, and there are certain common law tests for the lawfulness required. And basically, it goes, these three tests are the legitimate aim. So there must be the problem that's desired, the objective to be achieved. And what is that legitimate aim? Okay. The second one is the reasonableness of it all. Is it reasonable? And the third one is the proportionate. How proportionate is it? So how imposing is it upon our rights? So it's got to be the least imposing. For a law to be passed, it must go through this test. So here's how you can. This is so funny. If you go on to legislation.gov.uk.
Yep.
I'm typing this in now so I can follow. Legislation.gov.uk, and type in any statute or act you want. So think of something that pops off the top of your head.
I only know the constitutional statutes, like the Bill of Rights Act.
Oh, okay. Anything now like the Coronavirus Act, for instance. Let's look at that.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. If you go up to the top, in the big bold black letters, it says more resources. Click on that. Okay. And then it will say, if you read down, associated documents, explanatory notes, impact assessments. Can you see that on the left?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, impact assessments, list of changes.
And yeah, where it says impact assessment, it says there are no associated impact assessments with this legislation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no legitimate aim being discussed. There's no reasonableness of the proposal, and it's not been considered how imposing it is on your rights. So therefore, this cannot be legitimate.
Wow.
And if you go to legislation's homepage, you just click on the main top part, and it will describe to you about how legislation is created. Yeah, how legislation comes into force down at the bottom. Can you see that?
So it says understanding legislation, how legislation works.
Yeah, and it will tell you there that it needs to have its legitimate aim, the reasonableness of it, and is it proportionate? So they'll actually tell you themselves that this isn't law. It's legislation. So there is a difference on here. We can actually find out what law is, because it's been discussed and regulated by Parliament as to the actual definition of the word law and what it means. So if you go up to address the title bar at the top, and type in Act of Settlement. And it's 1700 in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and it comes up with, what does it come up with?
It says introductory text.
Okay, let's go over to the left-hand panel then, and click on Opening Options, and then click on Open the Whole Act.
Oh, yeah.
And if you scroll right to the bottom, Section 4.
Yep. Laws and statutes and realm confirmed.
That's it. Yeah. And then it says the first line.
And whereas the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof.
That's it. No, that's it. You just read it. It's defined what law is. The laws of England are the birthright of the people. That's it. So that's what law is. Your birthright is clean air, nutritious food, clean drinking water, shelter, property. your children, your offspring, whatever you want to call them. This is the law, and it's the law created by God, the Ten Commandments. These are our laws. They're not statutes, and it's defined by Parliament here. The laws of England are the birthright of the people. That's it. And statutes and acts are literally the duties and the liabilities that are created by Parliament. They're not laws, they're statutes and acts. It doesn't say here anything about statutes or acts. It says law. The law is the birthright of the people. It's that simple that it's hard to switch your brain out because we've been programmed to think. But as I said, the Statute of Interpretations Act states that you must interpret the words exactly how they are written. So this is stating exactly what it says. The laws are the birthright of the people. That's what law is, defined by Parliament.
Brilliant. So I guess, so if that's the case, then literally all you need to say to anybody that comes around that tries to impose a statute, an act, a law, a bit of legislation on you is, do you acknowledge that you're talking to a living, breathing, man or woman, however you define yourself, and that's it, because they can't contract with like a corporation of which they're representing. They can't contract with a living, breathing man or woman.
Well, a policeman, his duty is to keep the peace. That's what he swears an oath to, or an affirmation or attestation, is to keep the peace. Yeah? That's it. That's his only duty, because we all have that right. We all can make a citizen's arrest if someone's breaching the peace. He just gets paid for it full time. He's not obliged to do anything else other than uphold that oath or that affirmation or attestation that he took. So everything else he does is acting outside of his office. Right. And therefore you ask him, are you acting under your office? Because if you're acting under your office, you're there to keep the peace. All policemen are independent of everything else. They are personally liable for their judgment. They aren't accountable to anybody at all. They each make that individual deduction or decision in that moment, because they're only there to keep the peace. So everything else they ever do, they're accountable for. For instance, it's against the law to handcuff you. There must be a certain amount of force needed. If you say, for instance, a policeman comes to you and arrests you, and you put your hands up and you say, "Oh, I'll come quietly," and then he puts the handcuffs on you, well, that's battery, because there's not enough reason for him in law to restrain you, and he'll be found guilty in a court of law for it, and there are cases to prove this.
Good point. So what court of law would he be found guilty in? Would that be a criminal court?
Yeah, he'll be found guilty in a Crown Court.
So in a Crown Court, the thing is, how would you get that to a Crown Court? Because you would have to report that to the police?
Yeah, or you take out a civil prosecution.
Right, okay, a civil prosecution. And would that be in the Court of Chancery, the Equity Court?
No, it shouldn't be. It should go to the Magistrates' Court, which do both civil and criminal. And it would then also go to a Crown Court, depending on whether it's an indictable offence or not.
Right. What's the definition of an indictable offence?
It's something that's very serious, to be honest with you. I suppose I like to look at it as if it's the common law of our land, like murder or something of a serious nature, Whereas an offence, to me, is not a crime. It's not you haven't broken the law, so therefore you can get fined. But so for an indictable offence, you're facing prison.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying that last time we spoke. That really resonated with me. That kind of stuck when you were just like, you can't license a crime. I know this sounds so obvious when you say it, but I was just like, oh, of course.
R.J. Swift, I think his name was, the judge. R.J. Swift.
R.J. Swift.
R.J. Swift.
Oh, R.J. Swift. Do you remember the case, or I'll have a quick look at that. Here we go. R.J. Swift. So I put R.J. Swift cannot license a crime.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got me on the back foot today because I wasn't expecting any of this. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's all right. Well, just freestyling. I mean, like your knowledge is fantastic. I mean, like for somebody that's ignorant to all of this, it's literally kind of, people are so specialized these days in what they're doing. That it's really. I mean, I guess that's why they call them the elite, because it's the elite that effectively pays all these people to specialize in their fields. But this is where you divide and conquer. People are so specialized in their own fields. There's so much to learn. um, that you need specialists to come together. Like, I often educate on money and finance and commodities and securities and stuff like that. And just so like when someone like you says this, it's so obvious, and you're just like, how have I not thought of this before? Why have I not been told this? But this is why they're trying to keep us ignorant of everything like this.
well, it actually says it on your passport. You can travel the land unhindered, and this is by
Does it?
declaration of the Queen. So yeah,
Oh,
it's strange, isn't it? We don't, why do you need anything else if the Queen says you can travel unhindered? But then you can. There's cases that have been in this as well. There was one, Randall versus Tarrant, 1955, that says the rights of the members of the public to use the highway are prima facie rights of passage to and from places where the highway adjoins. So you've got free right to roam anywhere you want to go.
say that again. I'm going to type this in a search for
And that
it.
was Randall versus Tarrant, 1955.
Would that be Chris
Lord,
Tarrant?
that, it was Lord Evershed,
Randall
Evershed,
versus Tarrant, 19 what?
55.
55. There we go. Randall versus Tarrant. So it says CA 1955. The defendant had crashed into the plaintiff's parked vehicle as he tried to pass. The defendant denied negligence. Held. A driver on a highway who sees a stationary vehicle has to take all possible care to avoid a collision. If there is insufficient room to pass, he is negligent if he attempts to do so. If, however, there is enough room but a collision occurs, then prima facie he is again negligent. The onus being on him
But
to.
you're looking for a Lord Evershed statement which says the rights of members of the public to use the highway are prima facie, which is on the face of it, to and from places where the highway adjoins. So you've got freedom to travel there, freedom to do whatever you want.
And that was Lord Evershed.
Yeah, that should be in the sightings of that case. Well, it will be.
Oh no, this is Trust versus something else. Okay, great. Well, I'll. So Lord Evershed, 1955, Randall versus Tarrant.
Yeah. And then you had that R versus Donovan, 1934, which was the Court of Criminal Appeal, where Judge Swift said that if an act is unlawful in the sense of itself being a criminal act, it is plain that it cannot be rendered lawful, meaning no person can license another to commit a crime. So how can the government license people to do something? It would be a crime, wouldn't it? So it can't. So it's not a crime in the first place.
Brilliant. So that's R versus Donovan.
Yeah, R versus Donovan, 1934. There's 2 King's Bench, 498.
Got it. Fact issued, held, references.
I think there's about 2 men doing things to each other, and they agreed to it apparently. But the judge declared that you cannot license someone to commit a crime. You can't.
Huh.
No?
So what was the crime in this case? Was it
I'm not sure. I think there was kind of homosexuals doing some M&S or what they call it, M&M or I don't know.
Yes, it says here non-fatal offences. Facts.
Yeah.
The defendant argued that the victim agreed to meet him knowing about his intentions, and she gave indications that she was consenting throughout. Hence, the defendant, in order to gratify a perverted sexual passion, decided to beat the victim with a cane. Eventually, he's left 7 or 8 red marks on her body. The judge directed the jury that the consent or no consent was the issue. Therefore, the defendant was subsequently convicted of both indecent assault and common assault. So it says the issue, the defendant brought an appeal on the grounds that the jury had not been given adequate direction to decide the issue. It was held, the courts held that where a person, where a person acts with intention to inflict bodily harm, whether the victim consents or not, it does not make an unlawful conduct lawful. In addition, where there is question as to whether the defendant intended to inflict such harm, the burden of navigating consent falls upon the prosecution.
Down in there somewhere, you want to look for the judge's statements of what he makes, where he's the one who's saying you cannot license someone to commit a crime.
That's brilliant.
And like I said, these words in the Interpretation of Statutes Act, you have to interpret their words exactly as they're said. So you cannot license someone to commit a crime. You cannot give permission for a crime to be acted. So therefore, it can't be a crime to drive if you don't have a license. Can it? I mean, literally, by the interpretation of the words.
Brilliant. My goodness me. Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
yeah.
It's the same as marijuana, for instance. We are the biggest one. I think we are the biggest exporter of marijuana in the world, and it's not even native to our country. We export tons of the stuff every year. All the top MPs have a shareholding in it. There was one of them, a woman I can't remember, but her husband has one of the biggest companies in exporting marijuana, and yet it's a crime in this country. But they will give a license to people to produce it, sell it, export it, but it's a crime. How does that work out? It's not really a crime, is it? Because what we've got to do is pay some money, buy a license, and now you're allowed to do it. So it's just sort of common sense of working this stuff out. There's one set of rules for the elites, and there's another set of rules for the paupers. We pay to do everything. They get it all for free. They don't pay half of the things that we pay, and not many people know about this, that they don't pay taxes. They have, trust accounts, you know. Most of their bills they don't pay. It's all in trust. We pay. It's like most of your council tax, first off, goes to pay the pension of all the people working in the town halls. So all of this is catering to them instead of them catering to us. It's a complete inversion of how it was supposed to have been.
So if they have trust accounts, how can we get trust accounts?
Well, you make one. It's simple, really. And you can have an implied account. You can literally just state this, but for the sake of making it official, you just write it down, have it verified by 3 people, 3 witnesses. It's an implied trust or an express trust. So I've got a trust. I've expressed it on a document. I've had it witnessed by 3 people. And all of my belongings I put into the express trust. So I no longer own them, but the trust does. So anybody who comes to my door with a claim cannot take any of the possessions in it because they don't belong to me, they belong to the trust. And it's that simple. And you evidence it with a certificate. So I'll print out a certificate of trust and show that certificate of trust. So therefore, I don't ever have to show the trust itself because that's private. It's not a public trust.
Brilliant.
And that's law. You walk into a courtroom with a certificate of trust and show that, and it's law.
So what's the difference between expressed and implied?
Well, expressed, you've written it down.
Oh, that's the actual certificate.
Yeah. Well, no, that's just a document itself. You've expressed it in a document. So an implied trust is, well, it's a verbal thing. I've implied this, you know.
Oh, okay, right.
I've implied there's a trust between me and someone else, but I can't actually show any evidence of it. It's just an implied.
And would there be just off the top of your head? Do you have any circumstances where an implied trust? Oh, I see. So somebody, for example, who was incapacitated or maybe couldn't look after themselves or something.
That's it. When you go to hospital, there's an implied duty of care that they have to have, isn't there? The
Ah, I
postman
see.
has an implied right of access to your home to deliver your mail. Everything's implied until you refuse it.
Wow.
Which I did once, unfortunately. I put an implied right of access notice on my door, and my postman wouldn't put things through my letterbox, and I had to go and have a word with him. I'd say, it's okay, you're allowed. I'm just testing this stuff out. But
Yeah.
he knew exactly what it meant, you know. So these notices, these documents that people are doing, they are legitimate and they're very powerful.
Mm.
But I think it's come quite prevalent now that people are notifying people, people are putting people on notice. They didn't know the power of these documents right before, but in law, they're extremely powerful. So yeah, it's learning the little things that we need to do, which is what they already do.
So,
But it's common sense most of the time.
so what if, let's say we've got a let's say the local council doing things like putting up these facial recognition cameras. Could you put them on notice for something like
Well, they give you
breaching GDPR?
somewhere they have to give you notice, and they will give you notice somewhere. It's like where I live, for instance, they're building some flats, so they've sent everybody out a notice to tell them what they're doing. You can then go down to the council meeting and say, no thanks, I don't want that. They will give you notice at some point of what they're doing. So it's just a case of going there and letting them know, no thank you, I don't want that. But what they intend, or what they've always done, is keep us so busy that, one, you don't have time to read after these documents that come through your door. Two, you don't have time to go there anyway because you're working. And
Mm,
therefore, they can just go ahead and do whatever they want to do. The idea is to keep people so busy that you cannot interfere with their plans. But I
right.
suppose now, thanks to coronavirus, it's all a bit sort of come to, people's notice that they do have these options, but you just have to be diligent in what you're seeing and what's coming through your door. You know, like a lot of people are saying, ignore these notices that come through your door. That's a terrible thing to do. If you get a notice through your door and it's someone making a claim against you and you ignore it, sooner or later you're going to get a summary judgment against you. You're going to lose all your property. Someone's high court bailiff will come around and take everything. So it's not a good idea to act without honour, I suppose.
Ah,
What you
so
should do
um,
is,
so are you saying it's best to open all your mail? I mean, what if you're getting these? So a PO box is a non-contracting address. So if any
yeah,
letters come to your door, windowed envelopes. So in other words, it's tainted mail. With a
yeah.
with a PO box address. Are you still suggesting that it's best to open it and respond rather than just simply return to sender? Like you can write, PO box number, third party interloper acting in fraud, contrary to CF Fraud Act 2006, Section 3.
Well, what you're saying is correct, but that's not going to stop people coming and bashing your door down, is it? So you've got to approach it from a different angle
But they would have to
because,
have a contract, would they not, in order to do that? Contract that requires two signatures.
well, all they require is a dodgy magistrate who'll rubber stamp a document and let them come around and break into your house, which is what's happening all of the time.
Really?
So literally, you're relying on honesty and being a good person instead of understanding that it doesn't really matter what you do. There's someone dodgy who's giving someone a backhand who's letting all this stuff happen. It's all about power and money, and it's been going on for a long, long time. Ever since we became a treasonous country back in '73, I think it was. So it's all about understanding. Um, if I get a claim through my door and I ignore it, they're
Mm.
going to send round at some point a bailiff who I can get rid of. That's fine, but then it'll go to, let's say, a county court or a high court sheriff, who will then come round with a warrant and a legitimate warrant and come in and distress your goods. So what do I do about that? Well, the best thing to do is open up the document in the first place, read it, and have a look at it. Having said that, I personally haven't done that for some time. I've ignored a lot of my stuff for 20 odd years and nothing's ever happened about it. However, I do understand there's two ways to play the game. So, one way, depending on what debts I've got or what debts I want to keep, because, for instance, let's say I'm not paying my electricity. Well, I don't want them to cut me off or dig up the road or whatever they might do. So, I'm going to open that and deal with it and play the game. if there are certain things like, say, for instance, I don't know, your water, which you have a God-given right to have, it's your birthright. We've already established that's law. So they can't cut you off. So therefore, why would you pay for water if they can't cut you off?
Mm.
So it's like TV license, for instance. You don't have to pay for a TV license, and there's no law that says you do unless you're watching live TV. So why would you do that? But I would, however, open the document and then send it back a letter and say, no thanks, I don't need one, and your implied right of access has been removed, which I did many years ago, and I haven't heard from them in a long time, 10 years maybe. So I did at first chose to ignore it, and then after some years I chose to answer it, testing out both options.
And which one did you find worked best? I like that one where you said you're in. So where did they get their implied right of access from?
There isn't a natural implied right of access because we all have an equal share to the land. So under divine rights given to us by nature, by God, creator, whatever you call him, we all have an equal share to access everything, unless I encroach on somebody else's rights, and therefore they must notify me or notice me. Yeah, which is why we get a notice from someone saying you owe us money or you've encroached on my rights in some way. Now you answer that notice, stand in honour, and you say to them, "No, I haven't, and here's my reasons why," or "Yes, I have. Okay, I'll give you remuneration for it," or whatever it is. Yeah. So if someone a letter comes through my letterbox, I'll answer that. I'll open that letter, and then I'll decide how severe or how powerful. What am I dealing with? If they're very powerful, then I'll deal with it and I'll answer it. If I've got no worries and they've got no authority as far as I see, well, then I'll ignore it. But I'm playing both sides of the game all of the time. Does that make sense? It's the safest way that I feel. I don't. People who've got mortgages, for instance, you shouldn't be messing around with losing your house just for what you've read on the internet. That's a silly thing to do. So answer it, try and resolve it honourably. If you go into a court and you've got evidence to show that you've tried to resolve this, even if you lose your case, you won't be paying costs because you tried to resolve it, and you can show the court that it didn't have to go to court. That person pushed it, and therefore you won't imply any costs.
Wow. So just to give you a personal example of what I found, what happened to me. When I was invited to go to the magistrates court, all correspondence I got from them, there was no name. There was no name on anything. I think there was one name that I replied to, and then he got back a letter from a different person. But they're basically trying to, there was no PO box on the envelope, so I didn't really have a chance to return it to anybody. It seems that they're just not trying to. They don't want anyone in particular to put their name to anything, because they probably know that they are acting in treason. Because obviously, with magistrates courts, etc., Bill of Rights, no final forfeiture without a conviction of a jury of peers or of your peers.
Yeah, and then you see, but you've just said it yourself. So we're realising that they are all acting unlawfully. But it's how much and what is it you're at risk of losing at that one particular time. So, for instance, if it was dependent on, was that a car park ticket or was it a mortgage thing? Depends on how you're going to fight that. You can use their own legislation against them. There's loads of legislation of loopholes in that you can use for, especially things like parking tickets, and that's just rubbish. Half of them, every single step of the way in a law has to be defined. So first of all, was the camera, looking for the word, I can't find
Calibrated.
the word. Calibrated, yeah. Every little step you can think of. I had a friend who got a ticket for driving in the bus lane. Well, he wasn't driving in the bus lane. One of his wheels was over the line. Well, you've got to define driving, and you've got to define lane, and you've got to define each word, because that's what law is about, is defining words. So therefore, he got his ticket squashed because he wasn't driving in the bus lane. But the camera deemed flashed because his wheel went over the line, So it's about fighting everything and understanding the power that you have. You don't have to agree to anything, because everything is a contract. You're not a slave, and no one can tell you what to do. No one can impose their will upon you. If they did, that would be slavery. It'd be tyranny. So therefore, you need to have a contract with someone before you do anything.
So what about? Oh, you said earlier, these, the sheriffs sending bailiffs around to your house, even though you haven't got a contract with them, or would the contract be
Well, High
implied?
Court bailiff. Yeah, no, the High Court bailiffs would be deemed as having that power. But this is why I say you play the game, because you don't let it get that far. At first off, it starts in the magistrates' courts, which is nothing.
Mm.
And you can get rid of it in the magistrates' courts. Everything you have 20 days before to dismiss a case before it comes to court. If you look in the magistrates' rules, so one of the most powerful things you can do is read through the court rules. Everybody should be learning the rules of the court, how it plays. Then you hold them to account by their own rules, which I've held barristers on contempt of court by just learning their own rules. So it's a case of we don't learn this stuff and we go straight to a solicitor, and the solicitors won't tell us because they all work for the Bar Association. And the Bar Association is one of the most corrupt organisations you could ever meet, really. So their only job is to keep the system going. I mean, literally, it is that. It's the Law Society itself that is the biggest corruption. People think it's companies and all these big super multi-billion-dollar. No, it's not at all. It's the Law Society from within the City of London Corporation, the financial institution of the world, and it's the Law Society that controls the world. Everywhere you go in the world, everyone is a member of the Law Society, and it comes back to the City of London, the Inns of Court. These people are what is robbing us blind, and yet we go to them for help. It's completely ridiculous, isn't it? And all you've got to do really is learn the rules of court, and there's not many to learn.
Where can we find the
Depending on
rules
what
of court?
Well, you go onto the Google and type in, it'll be the civil rules of procedure. Or if you're in the criminal court, it'll be the criminal rules of procedure. That's it. And these are the only two things. So there are certain things let's say, for instance,
So how could we dismiss a case in the magistrates' courts, for example? You just write to them and say, case dismissed? Or
Well, I had a friend lately, well, not a friend, someone I met online, and they had an allegation made against them, and the documentation wasn't signed. So therefore, it's not proper, is it? It's not done proper. Everything needs to be done as it needs to be done. So because he didn't have his document signed, he looked down the rules of court, and it states, I can't remember what it was, I think it was 3.24 or something like this. It says all documentation must be signed. So then he applied to the court 20 days before his case was due for it to be dismissed on the fact of the documents weren't signed. So therefore, no one's bringing the claim. Because if the document's unsigned, who's bringing the claim? No one.
and I presume that the claimant has to be in court as well, does it?
Well, as you said, you received documents and there was no name on it. There's no contact details.
Yeah.
They do this all the time, but we can use their own rules against them to have it thrown out. So who signed your document?
Yeah, it wasn't signed.
So therefore, if you look through the rules of court, 2.4 or 3.4, whatever it is, it will say documents must be signed. Anyone who's bringing the claim against you must sign that document. So it's there for us to learn. Just we're not taught to go and find it ourselves. Though we're taught to rely on solicitors, really, and that's why we don't know.
And when you are following these rules of procedural rules, would you suggest writing back, sort of using postal mechanics, where you write on blue paper with blue ink pen, as the postmaster letter carrier of your documents, or could you just simply type out a printed letter and say, look, it wasn't signed?
That's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Postmaster General, eh? Yeah, rightio.
Oh, really? Yeah,
it's just English, isn't it? It's English. You walk into a court and you speak English. Yes, there might be legalese, but so what? A court has to, in the rules of the Bar Association, the rules state they must use plain English with litigants in person.
Huh.
So even though there is legalese, that's for the Bar Association between its own members. And there are reasons for that. It's because it cuts down time. For instance, they'll use maybe some Latin or something, because between them, they're professionals and they know their game and what it's all about, so they use this terminology. But for us, we don't. and they're not allowed to do that. And it states it in the solicitor's handbook, barrister's handbook. There's a Silex. There's a few of these things that they go on to and use. And so you can hold them accountable to that. They're not allowed to use legalese when dealing with litigant in person. So therefore, forget the post office mechanics, etc. Just write them a normal letter in plain English that anyone can understand. As it's expressed in the statute of interpretations, it must be interpreted as you said. So therefore, plain English is plain English.
Oh my God.
We've been led all of this stuff, all of this free man stuff, and all of the postal mechanics, and I see it as we're being misdirected, and it's a deliberate thing that's been put out there to keep people running around in circles, thinking they found something new. But it's really right in front of us if we understand it. It goes back to our constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights. It goes back to the fact that we're free and no one can make us do anything unless we contract with them to do it. I don't know if you know about the peacekeepers, but they've done something with the council tax where it states there is no obligation for anyone to do anything unless you agree to it. And if you think about that, it's simple, isn't it? No one can impose an obligation on you. How can they? That would be tyranny. That would be slavery.
Yes, I'll just see if I can bring that up for when we show you this video, because I know you sent that to me. Hold on one sec. Got it. There we go. Peacekeepers.org.uk.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, council tax update. Yeah, all right. Standing up for your rights. Brilliant. Can you just say that one more time?
What?
Just about the council tax.
Oh, right. Yeah, the obligation to pay.
That's
there is no obligation.
Huh.
And they cannot prove an obligation. So the Mark Horn, the bloke on there who's running the course, it's all free. It's literally it's a test. They teach you all of the stuff you need to know, and then they will give you a test as you go through on the website. So you're literally learning the law. And it's brilliant, and it's really easy. And there's videos to explain it all and teach it to you. And at the end of it, you are really self-empowered. You know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So one of them on there, they cover certain things. The Sentencing Act, for instance. Section 63 of the Sentencing Act states that when assessing the seriousness of a crime, the court must consider the seriousness of any offence. It must consider the culpability of committing the offence and any harm which the offence has caused or was intended to cause. So if you get a parking ticket, who have you damaged or who have you harmed?
Yeah.
No one.
What about a speeding fine? What would they say? Would they say, oh, you were...
Well, who have you harmed?
Yeah.
Who have you harmed? So if there's no one harmed, they can't fine you. Because under their own rules of court, under their own Sentencing Act 2020, Section 63, it states they must assess the seriousness of the harm that's caused. And if you've got simply put, if you haven't paid a bill, what harm has been caused? To who? Who have you damaged? Well, a corporation, maybe. But, you can get into this quite deep and you can come up with all these answers, but it's an easy way to rebut it. Where is your obligation?
Yes. So that was Section 63 you mentioned there?
Section 63 of the Sentencing Act 2020.
Oh, here we go. Let's see if I can find that on...
Assessing the seriousness, it is.
They come up here in chapters. I'll see if I can find...
It's in chapter 3.
Oh, is it? Here we go. Chapter 3, surcharge. Doesn't sound like the one.
Are you on Sentencing Act 2020?
Um. Yeah. Oh, it says section
Right.
17. Hold on. Oh, not here we go. Number 63. See what happens. Ugh.
It's only a small paragraph. If you go back and type it in Google, it'll come up straight away.
Sentencing Act. Let me see if so. Sentencing Act. Number 63.
So yeah, bear that in mind for people who are ever getting handcuffed as well. It's actually against the law. It's called excessive force. And even if the handcuffs are tight, it's called excessive force. So just a point of knowledge here, right, is in 2015, 2014, Channel 4 did on their website did an article by whistleblowers from the Met Police Force. And it states, you can type this into Google, and you should type in, police arrest targets do exist.
Police
And when you read
arrest
through that
targets to
document,
exist.
yeah, and when you read through that document, it states that police are told to arrest 2 people a month to keep up the targets to show that they're doing a good job.
Huh.
That in itself is unlawful, isn't it?
That's
Because they're
outrageous.
just going around arresting people in order to look good in the public's eyes. Look, we're fighting crime. Well, no, you're not. You're creating crime. And like I said, way
They're
back from the
committing
days of,
crime.
way back from the days of Hitchens, the police force itself was designed to generate revenue. That's what it's about. And that's all it's ever been about. So yes, there are some good police, and I'm sure they've joined for the right reasons. But the underpinning of it all is about literally revenue generation. It pays the crown. Crime pays the crown, the government. I mean, how does it ever benefit us? Are we ever happy to see a policeman at the door? Never. You know, well, we should do. In the olden days, when I was a kid, we used to have bobbies. You did something wrong, they'd give you a clip round the ear. Nowadays, they take you down the station, they hold you there for 24 hours, they do all these sorts of things to you. It's just tyrannical now. It's nothing to do with law and order. It's all to do with offences. You know, have you committed this offence? Have you committed that offence? Can we fine you for it? Let's go running through the system. They put you through the system and they assess you really quickly. And the reason for that is because if you delayed that time, you'll be able to find the laws and the rules to get out of what they've done to you.
Wow.
So yeah, find
what's
them on the Channel 4 website.
so what do you know about them creating a bond from everything that they do to you in terms of like trying to fine you and things like that?
Oh, what to do with the Cester KV
Yeah,
Trust?
yeah.
Yeah, no, well, it's interesting. It's all run around like a headless chicken, go follow someone's direction. I mean, when you read it, it says so itself. It's for the law of the sea. And does that mean that we're all on everyone died in the Black Plague and the Great Fire of London? So how on earth are you going to um, issue out whatever's left over to the people who are alive? You've got to have some form of, when something happens, it all goes to the government or the Crown, okay, the Crown Corporation. The Crown Corporation hold it in trust. Your house burns down or blows up. What happens to your neighbours next door? Are they going to be living next door to a rat-infested area? It's not going to be nice and hygienic for them. So therefore, the government will take that area and rebuild on it. So it's about that. It's about restoring what's been damaged. It's not about you're dead at sea and all the rest of this stuff. But people have misinterpreted it to make it what they want it to be. But it's not about that at all. It's about in the Great Fire of London when everything was burnt down. What you want to live? Your house is standing in the middle of a street, and 4 houses either side have been burnt down. Well, do you want to live next to a rat-infested area? No, you want someone to come in and clean it up and rebuild it. So therefore, they'll reallocate all the assets to people who are homeless and need somewhere to live. So it's like I said, it's all a big misconception that people are sent down these rabbit holes chasing all these hopeful options that aren't really there. The only way out of this is to learn the law, learn what they're doing, and do it back onto them. And understanding the very first principle is everything in law is about peace, keeping the peace, breaching the Queen's peace, or the King's peace now. So everything else is a contract. These two principles are the one thing that we got to get our head around. There's no obligation for me to do anything unless I agree to it. Otherwise, it's tyranny and physical force or threat of violence. And the other thing I've got to do is keep the peace. And if I don't do any of these two things, I haven't broken the law. No constable under his oath who's sworn to uphold to keep the peace can do anything to me. And a judge will put him in prison if he goes against that, his oath. And it's happened before. Police do go to prison for it. Because we live in a Commonwealth country with common law jurisdiction. And that is no harm, no damage, and no fraud. That's it. Don't damage any property, don't fraud people out of money, and don't hurt anybody. Everything else is an offence. Well, that's under your statutory legislation. And you can get out of that if you read through the rules of court.
So what about, let's say, HM Revenue and Customs? Because we now know that since Britain joined the EEC, that the UK became a corporation with a head of state. So the monarch had a change of title. So does that mean that HMRC is literally no different to McDonald's, asking you for a slice of your income?
To a degree, yeah, really. In a nutshell, yeah.
Have you ever tackled them?
Yeah, I have, yeah. Section 38 of the European Union Act 2020. In that section, it states that literally by the Queen giving over this authority, she will be deposed and become a mere citizen of the European Union. So, yes, you can evidence all this. There was a man called Norris McWhirter who was the Guinness Book of Records TV presenter once. I don't know if you remember that. You might not be that old.
I remember Roy Castle on Guinness World Records.
Right. Yeah, well, he used to be with him. He was the co-presenter.
Oh, I remember him. Yeah.
They took it to court. You can actually search this out online. It's been about 25, 30 years ago now, maybe 20 years ago. And there's actually a documentation of everything they wrote out in it. And where they took it to the magistrates and they upheld it, they took it to the court and the court didn't want to know about it. But literally, they've stated about Edward Heath and the treason that was committed and the FCA 1030/48 document that came out that's now been released 20 odd years later. So it's all findable. Everyone can find this online. It's all there. So yes, we have been committing, the government committed treason. So it is all unlawful. However, there's different ways to face this, because if you go and look at your tax documents, it says that anybody filling out this form will be liable to pay the tax. It tells you on it.
Oh my God.
So you don't fill out the form because then you're not liable. And then you ask them, where's my obligation to do so? There is none, because they can't make you, or else that would be tyrannical slavery.
Oh my God.
It's literally reading their forms of what they put out. It's really funny because people don't read terms and conditions. Of course we don't, it's just too much.
Yeah.
But it's all there for us to know if we want to delve that deep into it. And so since the coronavirus, most people haven't had a lot of time, and this is why a lot of this is coming to light now, because people have had more time to do this. But it really is that simple. Number one, no one can impose their will upon you unless you agree to it in a contract. So the council tax, this is what they're doing in the Peacekeepers. It's so cool. Where they are asking them to show their obligation. So he went to court, Mark, and the council backed down because they couldn't prove that he had an obligation in law to do what they tell him to do. That would be slavery. So they just backed away. So that set precedent, really, because everyone's now using that exact same question. Show me the obligation. And no one can. I mean, what makes Parliament, 650 people sitting in Parliament, have the right to tell?
Oh, you still there, mate? You just gone silent. Tell you what, I'll just oh.
Cut off.
Hey, there we go, and we're back in the room. Great stuff. Yeah, that was just, yeah. Sorry, whereabouts did he get to? Where you just literally got cut off there? Oh, you about the obligation going to council when they back down.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically set precedent now. So anyone can go into the court, or when you get your council tax, and say to them, "Well, show me the obligation." This was done in a Liverpool court, so magistrates' court. But it's all courts have to abide by the higher court decision. So once enough people go in and do this, and it becomes literally a standard thing for people to do, show me the obligation. There's nothing anyone can do about this. They can't prove that you have an obligation. I mean, and this is the whole thing. We have literally acquiesced to this whole system over the last 20, 30 years. We've all applied for a driving license. They didn't tell us we had to. We did it. Our mum and dads told us we had to. When we grew up, they said to us, this is how it is. There's no getting out of it. You've got to do it. And we just followed along and did it. Now people are beginning to question it. Well, I don't have to do this. Why do I? And it really is. This is what's going to be this great reset. Literally, is the people waking up to realise this is what the true power is. When we realise that we are born free. European Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1 states, all are born free and equal. That's equal before the law. No one has any more right than you. No policeman, no prosecutor, nobody. We're all equal. And it's that powerful when you suddenly switch on and realise, God, no one can tell me what to do. No one can make me do anything if I don't agree to it. So your laws, your punishments, your tickets, your fines, none of it's real unless, one, I've hurt somebody, or two, I've agreed to it,
And they try to trick you into agreeing to it.
Well, they do, and they do it big red letters on a bit of paper. Oh, warning! And we go, oh, psychological damage. And we agree, But it's just a game. I mean, I literally look at it now like it's a game. It's a psychological game. And we've all been, ever since, there was I don't know if you've heard of MK Ultra, have you?
Yeah, I know the name. Yep.
Yeah. Well, this is a real thing. The American government had to pay out money to remunerate people for the damages that they did. So this is a real thing of government programming. Now, in England, we have the same thing, and it's called Mindspace. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I haven't.
Well, if you got it's on the government, it's called what's it called? Government. I can't remember now. But if you just type into Google Mindspace,
I'll do that right now. Hold on 1 second. Mindspace, mindful meditation, or global office and co-working. No, that's not it. Is there anything?
So, yeah, do a little space and put in Gov. Mindspace.gov. The Institute for Government.org.uk. Mindspace.
Hold on. Mindspace Government.
Yeah.
The Behavioural Insights Team.
There you go.
Oh.
The Behavioural Insights. They call it nudging. They like to nudge us.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
Right. Well, it's psychological programming. They are literally brainwashing us and hypnotizing us into doing what we want. And they've been studying this for a long, long time. It is literally, there's a solicitor, Anna de Brisset, I think her
I
name
know
is.
her. Yeah.
She talks about this and she states, this is against the law. This is literally criminal. No one's probably heard of this. I don't know, but
I've heard people mentioning the nudge brigade, whatever.
Right. Well, this is what they're doing to make you believe that you have to obey their statutes and acts. This is why they're, literally altering the education system to take out the knowledge of our constitutional rights. It's all about that one world government creating in 2030 agenda, new world order. And this is how they're doing it, implementing Mindspace.
Oh my
So the
God.
Tavistock Institute, etc., which has been known for manipulating people's minds for a long time. So it's there in our faces, but we just don't know to look for it. So all of this is part of the agenda with, the GMOs in our food and the toxicity of the water and everything else that they're doing to us to dumb us down literally, biologically. So we just don't even want to know anymore,
Oh,
so and this booklet, it's a large booklet, it's a lot of reading, but it covers everything that they do to us. So it's awful when you read about it, how they are manipulating you and what they're doing to you. Well, all of us, not you. But...
So what do you have any personal plans? You're just like, how do we combat this?
Well, so I'm self-sustaining really is one of the things. Not relying on these big corporations to provide me as little as possible. So I have generators and stuff like that, which I've been accumulating for a while. I don't use anything that I don't have to from the system.
Do you have a passport to travel?
No, because I'm quite content, so I don't need to leave the country.
Oh, got you. Okay.
If I leave the country, I'll be leaving for good, and I'll never come back again. It'll be that when it's got to that point, which it will be getting to soon. I know it will.
I think Britain is going to be the last stronghold that they're going to try and break, which is why they're flooding the island with illegal immigrants at the moment.
Well, one of my neighbours used to be very religious. He's left now, but and he was a foreigner, and I used to say to him about why the world is like it is in their country, why they're very religious, and they don't have door numbers, they don't pay taxes. It's really strange, and this is one of the reasons the birth certificate was made, because this is why when we were born, you was fined, I think it was £2 or something in those days, that you had to register your child with a parish, and if you don't, you're done for. But the only reason was so you can pay taxes. There's no other reason for it. Well, in their country, they don't have a door number. They don't register anything. Everything's just done voluntary. Once a year, you pay your tax bill. And it was amazing. So he started talking to me about the Bible and religion, and I learned so much from him about how the law is, because the law is based on the Bible and the agenda that's happening. And if you learn about the law of the Bible, it'll unfold so much. And I'm not a religious person as such. I would say I'm spiritual, but I'm not. I don't believe in religion. I believe religion is literally something that's created to manipulate us. There is no such thing as different races, and they like to segregate people with all of these different religions and colours and creeds, and we're not. There's one race. It's the human race. Something to do with what colour you are and all this rubbish. So when you understand about the laws of the Bible, this one thing he said to me, Galatians 5:14, be that the whole of the law. Love your neighbour as yourself. So if you do that, this is where our law stems from. Do no harm, no damage, or no loss. And this is what the Commonwealth is. This is what our land is. But we've lost this by bringing in all the foreigners in. We don't speak English. We no longer have a connection with them. So we've lost a bond. So when the police come round or other enforcement agencies come round, they're not going to stand up for us because they don't even know us. We don't even connect with them anymore. So this is the whole agenda of the government, is to segregate us to such a degree that we have no real connection with anybody else. And therefore, divided we fall. So we've got to start coming together in communities. We've got to start getting that contact back with each other again. Because otherwise we're done for, you know.
Is there
Once upon a time... Sorry, go on.
Is there any way you've thought of to, you know, hold these criminals in Parliament accountable for what they're doing? Because, I mean, we all know that they're all part of this Rockefeller system, basically.
Well, the funny thing that always used to occur to me was when people vote, they're giving away their authority and their power to say that I'm not clever and you need to make this decision for me. I mean, that's literally what voting is doing. It's suffrage. So why do people do that? If everybody stopped voting, I wonder if they'd still turn around and say, this year we got this many votes, when nobody actually voted for them. Because, you know, the only thing that gives them any authority is by these people walking into a polling booth. And if you look at the definition, the etymology of words, where do these words come from? Polling booth. It's an opinion poll. It doesn't mean you get a right to anything. It means they're just asking your opinion. It doesn't mean it's going to be enforced, which is why they do what they want, which is why we've had 2 or 3 prime ministers that we haven't even voted for, because it's just an opinion. There is no authenticity behind any of it. So to me, I just think one of the first things people have got to do is stop saying we need someone else to make decisions for us. Stop voting for these people. Get together with your own communities. And again, this is what they're doing on Peacekeepers. They're creating communities, and they're doing it worldwide. And they're literally making groups of people who control their own authority. There's got to be an 80% decision on the law that is created in that group. You know, no one can impose their will upon another. But you have to obviously stand by these common law rules of no harm, no loss, no damage. And everything else you're free to do. You're free to explore your consciousness in this realm any way you see fit, as long as you don't harm another or damage anything. It's up to you. You'll make your own decisions. You'll make your own mess-ups and choices. But that's what we're here for, is we're here to experience it and learn, aren't we? We're not here to be told how to raise our children, or what food we can and can't eat, or this is the amount of money we must live off, and you've got to pay these people all this. Like Rishi Sunak had a £70,000 bowling alley put in his house the other day. Well, some people can't even afford to heat their home now. But he earns 730. He's got investments. His worth 730 million, and yet he's taken a job which pays him £130,000 a year. That doesn't make any sense. But he has got investments in cryptocurrencies to help him bring in the new CBDCs and control everybody's money. So when you look at behind all of this, you think, they haven't got our best interests at heart. They're not there for us. They're there for themselves, and they've sworn this oath to keep it all between them and keep it hush-hush. And all the public school boys go in with this knowledge of knowing about trusts and how to keep their own inheritance without losing any of this stuff. Whereas we, you know, we've got to pay half of our inheritance money to them, literally. The Crown Estate. And I don't know if you know this, but when you spell Crown, there's CROWN and there's CROWNE. And they're 2 different things. And one's the monarch and one is literally the revenue connection generating machine. And the Crown Estate is what the Bar Association is. It's all about revenue collection. Most of the people in prison, 50% of the people in prison, aren't there because they've committed a crime against another man or a woman. But they're in there because it's generating revenue. They say it costs £300 a day or something to put someone in prison and keep them, but they're making £800 a day from what they're generating by putting plastic hoses in bags or whatever the work they get them to do. They don't tell you how much profit they make out of a prison. They just tell you how much it costs. All of it wouldn't be done if it wasn't worthwhile for them, you know.
Oh my God.
So the whole thing is a lie. Right back from the very beginnings of time, the whole thing has been a big lie. They're there we put them into these positions to serve us. And yet what they've done is they've completely inverted it and made us think that we've now got to do what they say. You take your child to school, you give it away to a stranger for 8 hours of the day, and you don't know what's going on with your child. And these people have been trained now to teach them exactly the same thing in every school, in every area of the country. Where is going to be any individual thought in 10 years? None. Everyone's going to be thinking the same thing, thinking the same way. Complete mind space programming. And it's part of the agenda. It's what gets us to where they want us to be. Locked inside some virtual environment, sitting in our room, not going out anywhere in our little intercities. And anyone who disobeys, they've built 6 super prisons for us all to be put in that house thousands of people. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, yeah.
Super prisons, yeah. So it's not just for these unvaccinated, it's for people who in the future who dissent against the system. And that's what it's all about. It's, I mean, think about it. If you owned the country, money doesn't matter to you. It's not about money, it's about power. And that power creates megalomaniacs. It creates people who just want more and more power. So it's got nothing to do with, I mean, they print their own money. It's got nothing to do with money. It's about authoritarianism, control, power. They are literally psychos. And it took me a long time to get my head around that. I didn't want to believe it for many years, but having first-hand experience of dealing with some of these people and being through the Justinian system of how it works, and I went right back in law to the very beginnings of the Roman law and researched the entire amount of it to understand why am I walking into court. I mean, the first time I ever walked into a court, I nearly had a breakdown when I saw the man in his black cape, and I thought, oh my God, I'm looking at the priest of Baal, all this stuff I've read about,
Yeah.
So it was awful, and they did exactly everything that I'd read about when you're in the dock, and it was just horrific on the mind. But then after some many years of doing it, I now treat it as a game because it's literally a game, and I've been managing to reverse it upon them myself now. So I treat it as they thrive off fear, and they literally do. This is why you get your documents through the door with your big red letters on. It's psychological fear. You stand in a courtroom, and it's all he's up there on the pedestal, and you're down here, and it's all about the mind control of fear. And once you realise that there is nothing to fear, you literally become empowered, and that's what gives you the ability then to start saying to them, well, actually, I'm going to hold you accountable by your rules of court, and this is how it works, and this is what you're supposed to be doing, which is why I also put barristers on contempt of court. Not many people do that, I'm sure, but it's knowing that I can do that because it says so in the rules. But most people don't read the rules because we don't have the time. So this whole system needs to be brought down, but you can't do it with violence because they win, because they've got all the guns. Mm-hmm. So what do? Well, we need to bring it down by creating our own societies, our own systems, relying on each other, creating tighter bonds. And that way, they will literally just disappear because we're not giving them our attention. They're having no more power or authority because they will literally lose all of the mind control that they've got over the people in the institutions. And the people in governments and councils will suddenly just wake up and turn away from it. The more and more people who become self-reliant, the more and more people wake up other people to doing the same thing. That's just my thoughts on it.
We've got nothing to lose. I fully agree with everything you've said there.
I mean, there are a lot of people, and I was one of them once upon a time, who thought the only way is violence to bring them down, literally. But I know that's not going to happen. Violence creates violence. You can't win that way at the end of the day. You have to play that intellectual level with them because they're not that clever. They're just a byproduct of people who were clever, who created this system. But now the people who are in it and running it, they're not that clever. The ones who are the clever ones, we don't even hear about them. And it's not the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds, it's the people who control them that we don't hear about.
Who do you think they are?
Well, they go back in time to way back in the ancient histories. I mean, I don't even want to touch on that really because that might be a bit step too far for some people.
But I've worked basically when you boil everything down to it, everything that is happening to us right now, because everything is coordinated all around the world, it's coming from one person. One person.
Absolutely. One small group of people, yeah.
Yeah, but even a small group of people still has like a board of a chairman of the board. There's one person doing all of this. Because
Well, I would say there's a couple of heads of families that are doing it.
yeah, but like with a coordination, someone there has to be, there has to be a third party involved to agree on everything.
Well,
You
just
know.
like any family, you have fights in your family, so they also have fights. Not everyone agrees with everything, and this is one of the reasons why it takes them so long to do what they want to do, because there's always infighting between them as well.
But there's still one person who signs off on it.
I don't know.
It can't
I
be any
think
other
to a
way.
degree there'd have to be. Well, if that was the case, it would have happened a lot sooner because it would have been implemented and done and carried out.
Well, things that Rockefeller said in his secret covenant, drop by drop, drop by drop. You know, we will accomplish our goals, little by little, so that they don't see the changes occurring.
Yeah, true, and that's exactly what they've done. But like, it's not going to be Rockefeller himself. It wouldn't be one person individually. It would be maybe that family might have the last say. But even then, like I say, in the families, there's this hierarchy isn't necessarily so when you get to the powers of we control this country and we control that country. I mean, let's take Russia for instance with this war that's going on. He used to be part of the WEF. He was one of the young leaders, wasn't he,
Yeah,
Putin?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all of a sudden, now he's the big bad apple. Well, he's part of the team. He's always been part of the team. But people don't know about this or they don't have time to research this. But everyone around the whole world, if you control a country, you're all part of that boys' club. You're not going to get to that power and hold that power without being part of an organisation that's backing you.
That's true.
So, all of this is history and it's literally the way they want it to be. And where we're going is a very dystopian future and it's going to be terrible if people don't wake up soon enough.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, the the only reason they can get away with doing what they're doing is because they have the financial power to do it because they can just print they can just print currency from nothing, and people do their bidding when they just print this shit. That's
Yeah,
why I educate people on money. How we have to use a commodity, which is and again, they planned this global coup d'état, if you want to call it, for 2025, but they brought it forward to 2020 because the Bitcoin white paper expressed for the first time in history how to commoditize data. So you can actually use data as a medium of exchange that is a commodity, and they have no control over it. But I mean, what they've done is they've, in terms of the Bitcoin, they still, even though they couldn't take it down, they've still attacked it. Stolen the ticker symbol, associated that with an alternative protocol that is not Bitcoin, and created a $1 trillion market of utterly worthless tokens. To distract people away from using the one digital data commodity protocol that does actually threaten their economic power and dominance.
but you see, having digital money is part of something that you're into, isn't it? For crypto.
Well, this is it. So there's a big difference between a digital commodity because data can only be commoditized one way. So therefore, there will only be one digital commodity. All these cryptocurrencies that you refer to, they're all security offerings, and they're just a distraction away from this one protocol that actually threatens their economic power and dominance. It's nuts what they've done.
See, I was listening to something the other day about this, the internet, etc. And they got the power to switch it off. They created it, and who created it all? And the deep web and Alice, the AI. Have you ever heard of Alice?
I've heard references to it, yeah.
Right. So, if we're all using crypto, for instance, they still have control over everything, don't they?
Yeah, but crypto is security offerings. They're all, and the reason they're security offerings is because they are centrally controlled. Whereas if you're actually using a digital commodity, there is no central point of control or failure.
But what I mean is the internet itself is what they can control that, switch it on and off.
Well, the internet is made up of interconnected corporate servers, effectively.
No. Yeah, and therefore they can all be switched off.
Yeah, you'd have to coordinate it. But with Bitcoin, again, this is why it sort of threatens their economic power and dominance, because rather than being a group of interconnected servers that they could coerce into being shut down at the same time, Bitcoin is a globally distributed, economically competitive network of mining operations. So they're all economically competitive. So they have no incentive to unite or be coerced into joining. That's why you have to have competition in a system. If there is no competition in a system, you simply get centralization, basically. Collusion, that's the word I was looking for. So in order to prevent collusion in a system, it has to be economically competitive. And that's why the internet as we know it at the moment is not. It's not economically competitive. And those who, the largest corporations, they sell the data that we freely give them. The name of our pet dog, our neighbors, where we live, where we go on holiday, everything like that. Whereas if you're using the Bitcoin network, you actually have sovereignty over your data, because you are uploading it to a globally distributed, economically competitive network, where all your data, when it gets uploaded, goes through this process of blockchain and is hashed by SHA-256. So no one can see it, no one can access it, other than the person who has the private keys, which is the person who uploaded it. So if it brings you back into the private, but you can only upload information onto the Bitcoin network by paying for it with Bitcoin. So you buy Bitcoin in order to use its network, and when you use its network, these bad guys have no control over it, because
there was a while ago that MetaMask, for instance, banned certain amount of countries from using their software, didn't they?
Well, MetaMask is on Ethereum, and Ethereum is a security, so it's economically worthless.
But what I mean is, they still have control by having the people who make the software ban other countries from using it.
So it's a security offering, because you basically have the Ethereum Foundation controlling everything, whereas the way Bitcoin was designed is that literally you have miners that economically sustain and maintain the network, and all miners and developers are equally accountable as everybody else, because all the data that's uploaded is uploaded with a digital signature attached to it. So they can't do anything on the network that nobody else would know about. But again, this is where it comes down to them, trying to fool us. So they use the words centralized and decentralized because they cannot use the correct economic terminology, which is commoditized and securitized. So, the words centralized and decentralized are generic terms, so they can be applied to anything. You could say that a multinational corporation is decentralized, even though it's got a central point of control. Well, all it is, it's distributed. But they can call it decentralized because it's a generic term. It has no real true definition. And it's the same with the words of control and maintained. If controlling something is not the same as maintaining something, you can't control something if you're equally accountable as everybody else on the network. So therefore, all the miners on the Bitcoin network, they contribute towards maintaining it, that they don't control it. And the other one is privacy and anonymity. They always like to confuse people with that. So anonymity is what you would seek if you were in the toilet cubicle. Like, no one knows you're in there, you can do your business, no one knows what you've done. So therefore, you're not accountable to anybody. Whereas privacy is what you and your partner would seek behind the bedroom door. You can identify each other, you can engage with each other, but no third parties can see, hear, or interfere. But if a dispute arises between the two of you that you can't resolve yourself, then you have the evidence in order to present to a third party that can then settle the dispute. So again,
And who would that third party be?
What's that?
Who would that third party be?
Well, anybody that they choose.
No, but I mean, if you have a dispute, say for instance, on the BSV network, and you lose your funds, who do you go to get it back? You don't. No one.
But how would you lose how do you mean lose your funds?
Well, let's say you typed in the wrong address, typed in the wrong wallet address. Your money's gone. There's no way of getting it back. On the centralised, you can have it sort of traced and tracked, and you can get your funds back, can't you?
Well, there is an element of self-responsibility. If you're gonna send somebody a payment, caveat emptor, buyer beware. But it's the medium of exchange that is always sent first, and then you get the good or service in return. So if the good or service you receive doesn't fit the description that you were given, again, you can go to law enforcement and you can apply the Misdescriptions Act, where you can either get them to return your funds to you, or get the good or service that you expected. Right. Same laws apply, and really when you are transacting, you should be using paymail addresses. So paymail addresses are very unique, easy to recognize, hard to get wrong, and a brand new legacy address is created every time you send and receive a transaction. So each transaction looks unique on the blockchain, so that no third parties can attribute multiple transactions to a single wallet address.
So do you recommend, do you believe that crypto is the best way forward?
Well, again, like I said, crypto is security. Crypto are security offerings. Again, this is why they call it crypto. So currency, is created by a single authority. There is a big difference between a cryptocurrency and a digital commodity. And like I said, a digital commodity, digital data can only be commoditized one way. And that one way is with a fixed supply, a lock protocol, unbounded scaling, economic competition, and a chain of digital signatures for common accountability. So they are the elements of digital commoditization. But not only that, you also have to commoditize the network it's on. And again, this is why Satoshi Nakamoto released the white paper on the 31st of October 2008, but didn't start the network until the 3rd of January 2009. So if he created this thing and who could have started at any time he wanted, the question you have to ask yourself is, well, why leave it 2 months and 4 days before starting the network? Well, the reason being is that in order for the network to be considered and classified as a commodity, he had to provide an equal and common opportunity for everyone to start the network themselves. So the white paper was effectively notice. It was just like gold being in the ground. It's like, right, there is gold in the ground. I'm going to provide you with a reasonable amount of time, to do with it as you will. All the information that you need is there. What you do with it is up to you. And after 2 months had passed, so 2 months in British law is considered a reasonable amount of time. And then the extra 4 days is kind of like, 4 days grace on top of that. And it was just like, okay, well, I've given you all the information. It was there. Nobody started the network themselves. I'm going to start the network myself because everybody's had a reasonable opportunity of doing it. And then he also started it under a pseudonym so that the network would then grow organically without any central point of influence, which is why he then stepped away from the project to just simply let it grow. So after a period of 10 years, and with the consensus mechanism that it uses called proof of work, which is the economic competition, as time goes on, as more competition comes onto the network, any central point of authority or control becomes diluted. So after 10 years, you've got a period of 10 years of neutral growth and increased competition. So you now have a network with no central point of authority or control that's had organic growth over a period of 10 years that had a common starting point. So therefore, you have a network that's been commoditized and the 5 elements of digital commoditization. So the fact that supply is fixed means that no one can control it. If no one can control it, it means that no one can change it. therefore it's common to everyone. A locked protocol, and the protocol is just simply the rule set. So that's the digital foundations that the network is built on. If that's locked, again, no one can change it, no one can control it. Unbounded scaling, so effectively limitations and restrictions cannot be manufactured. And if limitations and restrictions can't be manufactured, it means that if they can't be manufactured, what's the word I'm looking for? It can't be manipulated. So in other words, limitations and restrictions can't be manipulated to somebody else's benefit. So unbounded scaling. Then you have to have economic competition, which is proof of work. So again, there's no collusion between the individual parties that maintain and sustain the network. And then the last thing is that you have to have a chain of digital signatures for common accountability. So if you have a network that no one controls, then you have to have a digital signature attached to anything that's uploaded to it, because it's that person that's ultimately responsible for it. If somebody had designed this system that didn't hold others accountable, then they themselves would be accountable for it. So what's happened on BTC is that a group of developers called Blockstream implemented what they said was a software upgrade called SegWit, which segregated the digital signatures from the transaction data. So this now means that there are no digital signatures with any transactions on the BTC network. So that means if somebody uploads naughty images of children onto the network and there is no digital signature attached to their transaction, well, the person responsible for that is the person who created the system and didn't put any digital signatures on it. And this is one of the reasons why they restricted the block size to 1 megabyte, because they don't want people using it. And the reason they don't want people using it is because they are personally accountable for it, because they've segregated the digital signatures from the transaction data.
I still think money's safer.
But money, the word money is created from two words. It's the mon, which is the singular, and the y is the commodity. So when a commodity monopolizes a market due to its ability to be used as a medium of exchange, it then becomes a monopoly commodity and recognized as money. That's what money is. So like a medium of exchange is a tool that enables, encourages, and accelerates the facilitation of trade. It is therefore economically competitive. So people just simply use the tool that facilitates trade in the best way. So there will only be one money in an economy. And this is why you can't ever allow a government to be in control of money. Because, well, one, nobody should be in control of it anyway, because you've got government that runs everything, and then, you have a single medium of exchange in the economy. So therefore, it has to be a commodity. And the word commodity is constructed of three words. It is something that is common, that's then been itemized and then identified. So that's where you get common, commodity, common item identified. So this is how you can commoditize data. So you have something that's common. So in other words, like no one can change it. It's then been itemized and then identified. So in other words, like to make it unique. So coffee, for example. An infinite supply of coffee means an economic value of 0. So what you would do, you would itemize it. So in other words, like bag it. You would then identify it to make that bag unique, and then that can be used as a medium of exchange. And again, this is why there was the gold. This is why the gold standard emerged, because gold had properties that made it more suitable as a medium of exchange. And again, this is why the powers that be purposely created the Second World War. They funded Hitler to get him to instigate a war in Europe to drain the European countries of the gold reserves, so that then they could say, oh, by the way, you now no longer have enough gold in your banks to back the amount of currency you have in circulation, because we've got it all. So your currency is now going to be backed by our currency, and it's our currency that's going to be backed by gold. And then that lasted until the 15th of August 1971, where Richard Nixon said, that gold we promised you, you're not getting it. And then from that moment on, all US dollar and all currencies backed by it by the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 instantly became securities fraud. Utterly fraudulent, But they didn't want people saying, "Oh, by the way, we're using securities fraud." So they gave it a new name. They renamed it fiat currency. It's basically it's utter fraud, and the fraud of that, which is quite amusing. So the Nixon shock was 15th of August 1971, but the Supreme Court case that defines securities fraud is the SEC versus W.J. Howico, 1946. So the law was already in place. They know it's securities fraud, but nobody's pulled them up on it. And again, probably
do you see how ignorance. That ties in with 1973 when we joined the European Union?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what they'd done is they'd made it securities fraud, so they could print as much as they could print basically as much as they want, and also sort of coincides with the assassination of JFK. So JFK was taken out in 1963, and then the moment they'd done that, they immediately set about planning the Japanese economic miracle, printing as much money as they want, rug pulled in the 1990s. And again, 1971, they were just like, oh, right, so now we've got control of the money. What we need to do is now take control of Great Britain. So, FCO forward 30/1048. It all ties in, absolutely. And then also you've got the Edward Heath, transferring 544 ton of gold, over to I think it was the European Central Bank, and then again the brown bottoms in 1992, something like that. I'd like literally half of what was left of the UK gold reserves. They're all in on it. They're all in on it. It's a massive fraud. But again, as Rockefeller said, an illusion it will be so large that those who see it will be thought of as insane. It's exactly what's going on.
So can I ask you, why do you pay taxes then?
Because I've only just learnt this. I shall not be paying taxes anymore.
Right. I mean, the literal truth of it is that we've all been deceived, haven't we, for so long?
Yeah.
And now people are waking up, but it's whether or not they've got the courage to take that extra step and say, I'm not contributing to a system that's so corrupt.
Well, yeah, so this is why. Well, so check this out. So, if you have a genuine money, a money that is fixed in supply, and being digital, it's infinitely divisible, therefore it never stops going up in value. It basically rockets up until it takes 50% of the market share. Then after that, the rate of increase starts to diminish, and it continues to diminish indefinitely. But it never actually stops going up because it's digital, so it's infinitely divisible. So people have an economic incentive to use this medium of exchange. So if you're a hairdresser and you're saying, "Oh right, that's 10 quid for a haircut," you can either and are you going to say, "Oh right, so you can either have £10 worth of a promissory note that actually doesn't get you anything, and that is being counterfeited like you wouldn't believe, so you're going to get less for it tomorrow than you will today," or you can have £10 worth of BSV, which is the genuine Bitcoin, and dollars, pounds, and yen were units of measurement. So if you were to say to somebody, "Oh, I've got a kilogram," well, that doesn't make sense. You've got a kilogram of what? What do you have a kilogram of? And it's the same with dollars, pounds, and yen. I've got £10. Well, you've got £10 of what? Well, if you've got £10 of fiat currency, you've got £10 of nothing. Whereas in Bitcoin, whereas in Bitcoin, you're actually giving them £10 worth of Bitcoin. So you're actually getting an asset. So now dollars, pounds, and yen, will actually have a unit measurement, which is how it should be. And they know that when people start using this, suddenly their legal and political influence, which stems from their economic power is gone. That's why they had to bring this pandemic forward 5 years, because they initially planned it for 2025, and they were just like, oh shit, if people start using this medium of exchange before that happens, we have no power over them. And you have the economic incentive that brings people into it. So that's why they had to start moving quickly.
They did a trial run, didn't they? A year before it came out. With the pandemic.
And so actually, what they did was so like McDonald's started trialing it seriously in 2017, and the powers that be were just like, oh shit, we can't allow this to happen. And this is where a group of developers called Blockstream came from out of nowhere and said, oh yeah, by the way, what we're going to do is we're going to implement SegWit. And SegWit is what segregated the digital signatures on the network that turned it into an economically worthless security offering. And it was only then that the BBC and ITV and all the mainstream medias started reporting on it. And the reason they allowed them to do that is because it was they'd basically made it economically worthless and legally illegitimate. So they were just like, yeah, fill your boots, tell everyone about it. We don't care. It's utterly worthless, and it's going to crash. And they restricted the block size to 1 megabyte, so that it could only handle like 7 transactions per second. And they were just like, oh yeah, this is a feature, not a bug. And all those idiots, who couldn't figure it out, actually believed them. Oh, it's not a peer-to-peer electronic cash system anymore, even though that's the title of the white paper. It's a store of value that doesn't do anything and you can't use. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's so stupid. Literally, if something is useful, it's valuable. If something is useless, it's worthless. Simple as that.
And all of that ties in with the Event 201 that they had, doesn't it? That was about the time that they started changing this to bring it all in, really, I suppose.
Yeah. So it was.
Remember the Event 201 pandemic?
Yeah. So this is where they planned it for 2025. So if you listen to the interview that Peter McCullough did with Joe Rogan, he said literally, the SPARS pandemic, they planned everything. He said literally the only thing they got wrong was the year. They said it was going to happen in 2025. Instead, it happened a few years early. And the reason it happened a few years early is because of the scaling of Bitcoin. They realized that the moment people started using a real money outside of their central banking system, they had no power over us. And then suddenly, when you've got lots of people getting exceptionally wealthy, off an asset that's increasing in value because it's useful, they were just like, well, economic power, they can actually turn that into capital, which could work against us. So you get people getting so wealthy that they can actually start their own police force. Start educating.
So does that mean that for the next bull run, there'll probably be the next jump up then to the implementation of it all?
Well, there's only going to so if you look at the mining operations, there is a miner on BTC called USA Foundry Pool, and they are MasterCard. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why would MasterCard be mining BTC and have like 25% of the hash rate when BTC can't do anything and won't be used for anything? Well, the only conclusion I can come to is that when the only thing that would crash the market is literally if BSV starts swallowing it up, because the value will just simply move into BSV. And so when that happens, they're just like, oh shit, we want as little value as possible flowing into BSV as possible. So when that starts to happen and the market starts to turn, what we'll do is we'll try and tank it and take as much value out of it as possible before it floods into BSV. That's why they're mining it. They're going to try and front run the collapse. But
yeah, I got some a while ago actually. I did get some BSV last year, I think.
Oh well, I'll send you the video I just made on the price. So what's really significant is that a billionaire called Calvin Ayre has just purchased Tal Mining, that was initially a public limited mining company, and so because they were public, they initially they were sort of having trouble raising funds and expanding their mining operations, and because obviously they got to follow the rules, they basically had to sell the BSV that they were mining in order to cover their mining operational running costs. However, now that Calvin has bought them out, Calvin can cover the operational running costs by other means and doesn't have to sell his BSV. So there's basically him and Craig who are mining BSV at the moment, and neither of them need to sell their BSV supplies. And Bitfinex literally put out a statement on November 23rd saying, "Oh, as of November 28th." We will have funding and margin trading at a reduced rate. And that means that they're running out of BSV reserves. And they said they would actually close funding and margin trading on the 12th of December. So that means there is none left. So when you put that much squeeze on the market, and there's still demand for it because it's one of the it's the most useful, the only useful coin on the market. They're not going to be able to suppress the price for much longer. And the only reason they can suppress the price at the moment is because back in 2019 they ran this delist BSV campaign, where they said to all the major exchanges, anybody who doesn't remove their BSV from our exchange, by the end of the month, we're going to basically confiscate. So they basically stole people's BSV, and they've been suppressing the market price for the last 3 years with their reserves. But those reserves that they've been burning through are now running out. And the supply is being substantially squeezed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on the 12th of December.
Really? Right. I'll keep my eyes open for that then.
Yeah. Well, I did a quick video. It's about 15 minutes. Just explaining the strange movements in price that we're seeing at the moment, because you've got all these huge upward spikes that have gone up and come down again, and it just shows that they're actually starting to lose control of the suppression because they're just running out of supplies. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do then is I've made 2 on it really. So I've made one called Farmers, Food Supply and Money, which basically educates on BSV and all. I go through the economic fundamentals, technical fundamentals, political fundamentals, and value proposition. And then this last one is just explaining the politics behind the price movements. So if you watch both of them, you'll be able to understand it all.
What site do you go to check out the movement?
So I use CoinDesk. Tell you what I'll do is I'll just send you the link right now. Actually, it's just quite a nice sort of site to look at. Here we go. Oh, there you go. I just sent you the link. So currently at $42. You can change it into GBP and any other currency that you want, sort of thing. $34 and 34 quid. Amazing.
Right.
So yeah, but that's a completely new topic. So I'll tell you what I'll do. We've actually been chatting for 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, which has been amazing. So I'll just go get some food probably. But then if you want, I'll give you a shout. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll send you the link to these sort of episodes that I've made, and then if you want to watch those and give me a shout back, I can do that for you. And then maybe we could have do another show on this, because I'm sure you've got loads more information.
Yeah, there was a lot more, but like I said, I wasn't quite sure what we're going to be touching on today. There was so much I had to say. Yeah, there is a lot I've got to share if you want to hear it.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, it's been awesome. This has been awesome. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. Okay. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun.
All right, yeah, Sean, I've enjoyed it too. Thanks, mate.
Excellent. All right, I'll tell you what. I'll love you and leave you here, and just close the show, and then I'll probably upload this onto YouTube and Odyssey, and then I'll send you these links, and then arrange to maybe chat sometime next week.
Okay, great. I'll speak to you soon then.
All
Cheers,
right.
mate.
Thanks very much. See you later. Bye.